Hi, I'm Meg Lee, the Director of Organizational Development for Frederick County Public Schools. I'm really fortunate today to be joined by Amy Struntz, our Supervisor of Induction and Professional Learning. In addition to being in charge of helping to onboard our new teachers, Amy's other responsibilities include planning and delivering professional development for all of our teachers, and she's also one of our system experts in the field of mind-brain education. Amy, thanks so much for being with us today. I thought that it would be helpful as we approach this time in the school year to talk a little bit about how we can help families and caregivers to do a little bit of a reset with students and to think a little bit about how they are setting forth routines and rituals at home that can support students, particularly during virtual learning. I was thinking about this because as we enter a second term, it gives us an opportunity to do a bit of a reset and to consider what might be some things that we should be doing a little bit differently that might help our students to learn better. So based on your expertise in the field of mind-brain education, can you tell us a little bit about why routines and rituals might be critical to students?
Well, what we know about the brain is that the brain thrives on predictability. And right now, our world is so unpredictable, and that's tough for our kids, and it causes some anxiety and stress in some of our children. So anything we can do as parents, as caregivers, teachers to create routines and rituals is going to benefit them in the long run. Because what it allows them to do when something becomes ritualistic, they don't have to think about it anymore. You just wake up and you do it. And so your brain does not have to expend energy thinking about it. Therefore, there's more energy for the brain to focus on the learning task at hand, which is what we want for our kids. So think simple. We know sleep is important, so consider starting with implementing a sleep routine and making that a ritual each and every night.
That is so key, Amy. We know that for the brain, memories are processed during REM sleep. That's that deep sleep that happens in the middle of the night. And so we want to make sure that students get lots of uninterrupted sleep. I also like how you talked about those rituals and routines because they provide comfort for all of us, adults and students alike. So I want you to also think a little bit about helping us to think differently about time outside. So how can we sort of break up a student's day? What are those breaks in the day? What could we use them for?
So I'm glad you asked that question. Brain breaks and movement are so important. And the research tells us that when we get up and move throughout the day, we get to reset our energy levels. It also helps us process the learning that we were previously engaged in. And then it also keeps our energy levels and us focused on the task at hand. So we definitely want to encourage our students and our children to get up and move. Something as simple as walking the dog, taking the trash out, doing chores, parents, going to the mailbox, but then also encouraging the things that they love, kicking around a soccer ball, going for a run, bouncing a basketball. All of those things, that physical fitness is really important for our brain health. And so as much as possible, we want to encourage our children to get out there and move and take those breaks from learning because it's really important to process their new learning.
I think lots of families and caregivers are going to love this suggestion about chores and walking the dog and getting the mail and taking out the trash as ways to make those brain breaks really effective. Amy, can you talk a little bit about the actual physical space that we set up for students to learn in at home? I know there have been some discussions about, what should you think about in terms of the desk? What about distractions? What about should they be working in a bedroom or in a dining room? Are there any particulars that from the research would make you lean a little bit more one direction or another? What would you advise?
Well, I think it's a great time now to be having that conversation as we approach the end of Q1. It's a good time to kind of just reassess. I think I would begin by just having a conversation with my child and saying, what's working for you? What's not working for you in your learning space? Do you even have a designated learning space, and what do we need to do to set one up? I would also encourage you to ask them about distractions. Have you noticed that there's things in our home or in your room or wherever you're working that are distracting you from the learning task at hand? And then work together to find a solution. I'd also ask them about organization. The brain loves organization, and so we want to make sure that we're implementing ways that our children can be organized throughout the day so that they're not having to search for information. So ask them about that. Also take an opportunity and observe your child while they're working. Look at their posture as they're working. Look at their computer station and their setup, and just kind of see if they look comfortable or if they're slouching. They may also come to you and complain about shoulder tightness or back aches or maybe even eye strain, headaches. That might be an indicator to you that maybe you do want to rethink their workspace and come up with a solution together to make it work for them.
I know that parents and families have reached out to me at times about screen time, what the research says about the amount of time students should be on screens and sort of those boundaries that families and parents might set about screens. And you've already mentioned some things that have made me start thinking, in particular about screen time and bedtime and how you kind of want to divide those and maybe make sure that students' sleep isn't interrupted by phones and other devices. But I wonder if you could speak a little bit about how FCPS teachers have been thinking about balancing screen time during this time where many students are learning virtually.
Well, I can assure you that teachers definitely have been thinking about it, and that most teachers are aware of the research related to screen time. But one of the things I want you to think about is not all screen time is the same. There is definitely screen time that is more quality. So consider a child that's, sitting in a classroom, virtual classroom, and they're engaged in a discussion related to Shakespeare, and they're having conversations with their peers, or they're reading information about Shakespeare. That's not equivalent to an hour spent playing video games. So that quality time really matters, and so consider that. And then I would also pay attention to the amount of time kids are learning online, and then try to balance their off time with an activity that doesn't require a screen. That's really important. And also make sure that you have a docking place for their phone in the evenings, so that they can get that uninterrupted sleep and they're not constantly checking their phones or their devices or hearing that little ding that they have an email to distract them. So those are just some things that you can think about related to screen time.
That's so helpful, Amy. Thank you very much. I hope everyone at home has taken away some tips from this conversation. I know I have. We're thinking about all of you during this challenging time and appreciate all the supports that families, caregivers, parents, and the community are providing for our students. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.